because you wouldn't cast a net over them and like make them love you and stay with you. So that's why I say that I don't let others, I don't hold them hostage to try to get their acceptance.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success.
My next guest is truly a vision. As we were jumping on the Zoom, I was saying how much I love Casey Cohen's color coordination. I can see her roses in the background, a little pop of color, and her hat and her striped shirt. So it's colorful and just makes me happy. Today, we're recording this on a Friday, going into the weekend, and you're bringing me a lot of joy as we start the day here on the West Coast. So Casey, thank you for being here. And of course, your company is House of Vision. So it perfectly plays into everything that you're about. It's true. That's true. Thank you so much for having me, Annika. Yes, I'm also really excited to tell you a story that launched everything that I'm doing now about a time that I was staying in a log home and was trying to decide whether to burn down my business or not, and went outside for one last ditch effort to the universe to ask if there was anything, anything else that was in store for me. And this vision of portrait photography came into play. And I was like, what in the world does that have to do with anything that I was doing at the time, which was coaching? And the answer just changed the trajectory of my life. So I'll fill you in on that later. Yes, please. I already need to hear more. So I know that you're a color consultant as well. So walk us through your journey, your process. What was that inflection point moment when you were like, I got to make a change? Right. So I have a background in psychology and also interior architecture. And I was actually working for a lighting agency, a 9-to-5 job, doing well with that. And I started a side business, and that was in color consulting, which is how that business got started. And it was doing really well just as a side thing. I really was only doing it so that I could become a better designer in the field. I felt like most people weren't color experts. I know I wasn't. I thought that I was when I graduated school, but I don't know if you've tried your hand at paint colors or not, but I remember putting a color on my wall that I thought was going to be this beautiful shade of pink, and I got it up there and it turned out to be brown. Oh. So I knew that I could help people once I learned how to do it myself. And that's how I got into that. But that business really took off. And I just thought if I spent more hours with it, maybe I could do better. And things were a little challenging in the workplace that I was at anyway. So much to my accountant's dismay, who had already figured out how much money I should have saved up before I even think about going off on my own at any point. And I just said, I'm just going to do it despite that. So I jumped ship. This was in Washington, D.C. I moved there and was working out of a paint store that was on the hill, on Capitol Hill, which was so exciting. I was becoming known as a color consultant there, sort of a local celebrity, and things were going really well until they weren't. And this was a moment where there was another person working there. I was an independent contractor helping the customers who came in the paint store to help them with paint. And then my business model was that I would go into their homes or their office and help them choose paint colors and, change their life and make them feel better. And so there was someone else working there, and I was pulled aside by the manager with her, and they said, well, she has kind of been unofficially doing the same thing that you're doing. And I was thinking, okay, where is this going? And he said, but we think there's enough, clientele, customers that it won't be a problem. So I said, okay, what else am I going to do? It's their store. And we tried it out. And a month later, my clientele, like the numbers just started declining, which is really surprising because you would think in a big city you wouldn't have that, but it happened. And I thought,
oh my gosh, I just lost a really, I just left a really secure job. And although I have money saved up, it's not, enough for the next, year or two. And I decided that I was going to take the business model that I had and move out to the suburbs. So I did that while staying in the city also because I was already known there. I didn't want to give that up. So I took that model out to the suburbs. It was doing really well there. It was doing so well that their sister store heard about me and said, "We want Casey in our store too." And then another store and then another store. And before you knew it, I swear I woke up, Annika, and I was suddenly making six figures. I was in six paint stores throughout the DC metropolitan area. And I had six color consultants who I trained and who were working for me to do the same thing that I was doing.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was going really, really well. And it was a lot of fun. And I mean, I was only doing this just to, it was just a stepping stone into the next stage for me. But I was working a lot and I just didn't really have a lot of free time. And I got invited to the mountains by a friend and decided to take that drive one weekend. And it was so beautiful. The drive outside of the city, it was just these rolling hills with green grass. And there were the Blue Ridge Mountains in front of me, just layers of blue mountains. I just felt this instant peace come over me. And it made me realize that the hectic city and the people on the roads that I had just left were all thinking about, oh, we got to get to soccer practice. We got to get to work. We got to do this. We got to do that. It was a lot different than the area I was in. Just the energy was shifting. So that made me feel like, you know what? I mean, I'm doing really well with this, but I didn't realize how stressful it was because some of the paint stores, weren't happy with some dress codes that my color consultants were coming in with, or, if, of course, if we didn't get there on time, or I don't know, just things weren't in the same place that they like them to be. And so, that was getting to be something to manage a store and to manage my people. And when I took a trip away, somebody didn't show up and they didn't call the right people. So, and they couldn't reach me because I was out of network. Yeah. And when I got back, I was just really chewed out by the store, which I understand. But I was just like, you know what? I'm fine just doing this on my own. I don't need the rest of this. And let me go find something else that I feel really passionate about that I can do well with. So that was kind of the beginning of the end of my color consulting journey.
Color is so important. I just remember when I was moving back to Los Angeles from Houston, this was about 6 years ago. And I had, prices are very different in those two cities and what you can get. So I had a lot more house in Houston. And I knew I was going to have to pare down my art collection. I really wouldn't have anywhere to store it. I didn't want to get a storage unit here. So I had to really think about, okay, now I'm going to be living at the beach. What pieces of art, what pieces of furniture, do I want to have the right mood, the stuff that I loved, and also stuff that would go really well. I'm looking at it right now with the new environment I was going to be in. And so, I wanted things that would make me happy, that would be vibrant, but that would also just continue with me on my journey.
Yes.
So, yeah.
It's color's so important and people sometimes don't realize it. One interesting thing was I would work with a lot of couples and there was usually one couple who was really excited about the paint colors and pushing for me to come in. And then there was the other person who was very apathetic about it and didn't care and didn't even want any part of it. But by the time it was over, because a lot of what I do is more than just color, it's because of my psychology background and just this intuitive nature that I have, I really was getting to know them on a very personal level and listening for things that they weren't saying and just going by the energy that was there so that in the end, the colors that were chosen, it wasn't based on what's trending, or what's in, but it was based on what their soul felt, because that's where you really come alive when you're looking at things around you and it's a color that just brings so much joy to you. So the really neat thing that would happen was when it was all said and done, the partner was always the one to say, "Oh my gosh, this is so incredible." And maybe it's because there were low stakes and they weren't expecting a lot, but they would be the ones to tell all their friends and talk about how, when they'd go to bed at night, how much more peaceful it was and how they both love being in this space. And the funny part is a lot of them would actually tell me I was like a color referee. And some would say that I actually saved some marriages. So, maybe I can put that I was a marriage, consultant on my resume. But yeah, it's so, so important.
So you had this pinnacle moment. You had taken the leap of faith, decided to go in a completely different direction without, just going by instinct, by knowing what you felt innately in your bones that you needed to do. Quickly found success, had a team, had all these stores, was making the money that you wanted or probably close to, but you still weren't feeling that satisfaction. And so when you're in the mountains and you have this vision, what was the interpretation and what did you decide to do next?
Yeah. So I decided to move to the mountains, to move to the place where I felt peace. I mean, I'm from Iowa anyway, so I'm used to growing up in, small town corn country.
Kansas. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably very similar. And so it just felt very peaceful for me to, be and just put my feet down and try to figure out what I wanted to do in a more peaceful place. And so I did that. And I hired a lot of mentors to try to figure out my passion and my purpose and what did I want to do. So I was experimenting a lot with things. And I was also going to school at the time to get my master's in construction management. Yes. And I wanted to get my master's really before my parents started getting older and might need more help. And I just wanted to be able to drop everything and be there with them. So I kind of wanted to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And I got through most of the program before I received a call that my mom had collapsed. Yeah. So she was in Colorado and I was in Virginia. And I got another call before I could actually get out there that she had actually passed away.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And the thing that she was 80, so, it's going to happen. And we were really close. But a couple of things really stirred around in me. One, I was just really instantly upset because she had just moved to a living facility that she had been wanting to move to for years. This was like on her bucket list, it was her dream because it was a really nice place. And her best friend of 50 years lived there, who was practically the mayor of the whole place. And she was just looking forward to having a social life and going swimming and meeting new people and doing crafts and going on field trips and all of the fun things that she wasn't able to do where she lived before. And as luck would have it, she was able to get in there right next door to her best friend of 50 years. It was like all of these wonderful things were falling on her plate. And my brother and sister and I were all just so excited for her. And she was there for 10 days and that's when she collapsed and then passed away. So devastated just doesn't even cover it. And I grieved, her loss for a while, but I was also really determined to be very happy for the time that, I had with her in my life. And it was also just stirring around in my head also that, she got to her destination with 10 days left. It was really the end, toward the end of her life. And I didn't want anyone else to experience that. I had also learned, Annika, that she had wanted to be an interior designer, which is the field that I went into, but I didn't learn that till way late in her life. I don't know why she never pursued it. I don't know what happened, but she didn't make that dream come true. She was more of a stay-at-home mom. So it really sunk into my bones and my cells that I needed to help women entrepreneurs get their ideas out into the world and get them out now. Don't wait. Don't just, feel content, to the end of your life and, not be able to get it or just have 10 days, to live with that. So that was really important to me. So all the testing and mentors that I had that were helping me try to figure out what to do, I landed on that. And I had already been trying out some like branding excursions. I did some intuitive color readings. I mean, I was trying everything. And I ended up putting that all together, everything that I had ever done, and went and started coaching women entrepreneurs. I already had the psychology background and a crisis center background, also doing volunteer work for them. And the results were just incredible, what I was able to do for people. And that's what made it so special when I could see them literally manifesting things so quickly, just at the speed of light, to the point that, I mean, they were surprised. I'm like, look, I'm just as surprised as you are. So this is wonderful. But I started doing that for a while. And that's what led into that story that I was telling you in the beginning.
It's amazing. I think as women, we naturally have really great intuition, but we ignore it so much of the time. We don't take that chance, that opportunity, because, I mean, this is also scientifically backed, right? Women tend to not go for position or go for a dream if they don't think they have all the skills necessary to get there, where men tend to go for their dream, for that job, even if they have only a small portion of the skills. And so it's really, puts us at a big disadvantage. And I think so many times we're afraid to step out into our brilliance. And so I love the fact that you have put all of these different things together that you've learned, that you've studied, to come up with a construct that will work with women, with and for women.
Yes, yes. And I love that, statistic of sorts that you bring up between men and women. And I love working with women just because I understand so much of our plight through life. And this was about the time I was working, trying out what I was doing with clients, and they were getting results that were just crazy. Like one person who'd wanted to write a book, and this is before AI came out. I know books are much easier to write these days, but she was a writer and, dreamed her whole life of publishing something. And within 2 weeks of working with me, not only did she finish a book that she'd had on the back burner for years, but she had pre-sold 50 copies with rave reviews without any, help or publisher or anything. And she had booked out clients. She was helping them write for almost 3 months in advance. And she was getting opportunities to speak in educational,
I know.
forums. And none of this was happening before. And the most miraculous thing was, it was during the pandemic, and she had had a hotel reservation so that she could spend time away from her home, away from her animals, and just have a writer's journey, being able to do, her next project. But it was canceled, and she didn't, we're all scared, right? Like, well, I don't know if I want to be, around people, if this is safe, not knowing what's going on. Her hotel reservation was canceled. She came back, we're consulting. She's like, I'm done. I don't know what to do. And I don't know where to go. And how am I going to get clients? And we talked with her. And part of what I do is pull out blocks that women have, because I find that that's really what's keeping them from doing what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily the skills like you were talking about, because you're right. We don't necessarily need to, learn more.
Right.
And so we're removing this block from her, something from childhood, and it opened her wide up. And the minute that happened, we got on our next call. She's like, you are not going to believe this, but I just got invited to pet sit for a weekend where I can go and do all of my writing. And I just got chills. It was so amazing. It just felt like things were lining up and everything was going well, but I wasn't making money with it. And one, triumph that I had to overcome was I did really well with the color consulting business. It took off. I felt like a local celebrity in DC. And this thing was just not taking off like I had wanted. And it was online. So it was to the point where I was feeling like, I think I'm going to have to go back and get a job. And I didn't really want to do that because I really cherished my freedom. And I knew that I did really well on my own. I have, these creative ideas. I feel like I could, sell business ideas on a street corner if I needed to. And I was just at a real low. And I was also thinking about my mom. I was like, she didn't get where she wanted to go. She didn't do what she really loved. I didn't want to follow in those same footsteps. And I just was feeling like this old, train full of cobwebs sitting on, a rusted set of tracks that just wasn't going anywhere. And I was sitting on the couch. I distinctly remember it in the log home. I'm like, nope, that's it. I am getting up. I am getting out of here. I'm going to take this step onto the porch. And I looked up to the sky, and it was just so blue that day. So blue, so beautiful, so peaceful. And I just said, universe, like, if there's anything else out there that I could possibly do, even though I'd seen 1,000, mentors and tried to go through my passion and purpose, I'm like, there's got to be something else. Like, if there is, what else might that be? And before I could even really finish getting the question out, that is when this vision of portrait photography came into play. It was like I saw this gilded frame. I saw like a couple of kids in the picture. And I was like, portrait photography, really? I mean, my dad was a hobbyist of photography. We grew up with a dark room in our basement. And I had a camera in my hands before going through art classes and things. I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to become a photographer. So I'm not sure what this is. But I swear I will just tuck it in my back pocket and, follow it out. Maybe it will reveal itself. So a few days later, I was like scrolling online and scrolling social media and looking at my colleagues who were, entrepreneurs who had businesses. And I was looking at what they were posting. I was looking at them. I was looking at pictures of them. People were doing lives. And I realized what I'd been doing was analyzing and comparing what they were putting out there to who they were and knowing that they were not where they wanted to be. And I thought, what if I helped my clients that I was already helping with photo shoots? And if I took what I was learning about them, if I took this deep knowledge about these blocks that I had uncovered and knowing where they want to go. And I also have a portion to my framework where we go into Pinterest and pull out visuals for their life, for their business. And now what if we do it for photo shoots and set them up to align, have their authentic self align with who they are, who their business is, what they want, who they're trying to attract. Just an idea I had. Yeah. And I tried it out. And one person went out and did her own photo shoot with her boyfriend, and they were taking pictures. She just pulled things out of the closet, but we were channeling an archetype for her. And we had inspiration from the visuals that we had taken from Pinterest. So this was the writer, and she had taken some images of her, of her in the forest. And we had ideas for baskets and things like that, but we had her put like books in a basket out in the forest. Instead of collecting flowers, she's collecting books. She was walking the train tracks, just all these really cool shots. And then she posted them. And of course, she's a great writer, so her writing went right along with the photo, and people were gushing over her. And that's when she started getting client after client after client that wanted to work with her, because we had just aligned like who she was so perfectly with what she does. And so we kept doing that, and I realized it was something that really worked. And I was able to use my knowledge and pair that up with my willing clients to do this really cool thing that manifested more clients for them and more money and more opportunities. So it really worked out.
Yeah. Wow. That's not something that you hear every day, right? And it's also not something that you would think about as a way to show who you truly authentically are and be able to manifest all of the things that you want to bring into your life. It's really beautiful. And I know there are a lot of women maybe been in the workforce for a few years, but they're not happy. Or I also have a lot of friends who are mid-career professionals who want to make a change. Maybe their kids are grown, they're in college now, and they say, okay, I've gotten as far as I want to go. I don't want to give my entire life over to this company. What do I do next? So I'm curious, what advice would you have for those women? And part two is, Do you see that a lot? Is that a lot of where your clients are coming to you from?
A lot of my clients are coming to me from having started a business already and doing well enough,
Yeah.
but wanting to do better. It ranges from just, them just starting out to being a year, 2 or 3 down the road, and they're just trying to get to that next level. So, depending where they are, part of the reason that I developed this was I felt like there was a real gap out there in the marketplace where, I mean, could you count how many mentors or strategists that you've hired to help you for your business on one hand? Yeah. Most of us have hired many people over the years, many mentors. And for me, I've hired a lot of copywriters to help me with sales pages and things like that, or even branding people or anything like that, where they'd give me a strategy and then I could take it and implement it. Only the problem was I didn't want to implement it. I came up with every reason not to implement it. And I found that this is what was happening a lot with my clients too, is that they feared being seen. They've got this beautiful setup or this beautiful brand, but they feel like, oh my gosh, that's way too good for me. It's, this is not who I am, even though it might be an elevated version of themselves. Or they just feel like, friends, family, colleagues are going to question them about it, or they're just ready to commit. Then there's the other side of people who do decide to take it and run with it, but they get to a point where they're doing really well. And suddenly they get this imposter syndrome like, oh my gosh, I just happened to do well, but I don't know how I did it. That's not me. And start backpedaling. But what I found where the gap was is that you've got strategists on one side who are delivering something. And for me, if I was if I would get emotional about it because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did all this and now I'm not going to move forward because I don't want to implement it because I'm scared of something. I can't tell that to my strategist because they're not therapists. That's not their zone of genius. And then if I've got a therapist or a life coach on this other end, I don't really go to them for business either because their specialty is dealing with my emotions. And believe me, I've tried and it didn't go anywhere. And I love both of these people, and I think that they're really good in their own right. Mm-hmm. But I felt like if there was someone who could work with this messy middle, then that would help implement the strategy and have the mindset work to allow them to get out there. Not only that, but really be themselves. So that's the area that I cover. And I would say for the people that are starting out and not, don't know what to do after their 9 to 5, or maybe they've just started in a business, is to understand that exists. And if they're going to hire a strategist, to be prepared for what emotional things might come up and get that support that they need. And then understand on the other end, that's perfectly normal if your therapist doesn't understand business. So you can have either of those, or they can work with someone like me where I can cover all of that. And it's like this safety net that helps them launch their personal brand in 90 days and get them out there and just loving life the way they imagined it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what I'm hearing from you is when you're in true alignment and you are willing to step out of your comfort zone and really be seen is when the magic happens.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So beautiful. I already have people I'm going to introduce you to.
You.
When we jump off this, I was just having a conversation about this yesterday with a beautiful friend of mine who has a business, but she's great. And we were at a podcast conference together and she was speaking on stage and she killed it. She was one of the best speakers I saw. Everybody was so energized, but she's still afraid of being seen. I think that's the problem a lot of women have at some point or other in our lives that, as you said, holds us back from living in our zone of genius, in our ikigai space, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Well, how do people work with you, especially because obviously not everybody's in the Virginia area?
Yes. Well, I specialize in working online. So right now they can reach out to me through social media, through Facebook, And you can leave that information for them, or my name is spelled with the initials KC. My last name is Cohn. There's only 6 letters. If you're listening to this while you're driving, hopefully you can remember that. Look me up there. I'm on LinkedIn and all the others. Yes.
Wonderful.
And
I'll link your LinkedIn in the show notes if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would love to give your listeners a gift that could help them. There's a lot going on in the marketplace and within one's industry. And sometimes it's hard for people to move forward because they think, how am I going to get seen? How am I going to get noticed? It's one thing to maybe not have the confidence that you need, but it's another to feel like, well, there's just too many people in this field and I'm never going to, be heard. So I've got this gift that I call Why You. And it's a tool that I developed that helps entrepreneurs differentiate themselves from the rest of their industry. And they do it by comparing themselves with other people that are around them. And it really opens them up to seeing exactly what makes them different, what makes them unique. And by doing that, they get more confidence. They can immediately start plunging into their messaging and just come out with a greater force of, yeah, this is me. This is what I do. And I felt like that really helps people kind of get the ball rolling. So they can reach out to me through social media, DM me, and I will get them that PDF.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I definitely want that PDF as well. So this has been a fantastic conversation. I know this is just barely touching the surface of all of the topics we could delve into, but thank you. I feel so much joy coming out of this conversation, peace, and elevation at the same time.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anna.
Of course. Thank you to everybody who's also listening to this episode or watching it on your favorite platform. Make sure to follow Casey, reach out to her on socials for that special offer, and leave us a rating review. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let me know what you want to see more of on the show. I always love hearing from people, and it really makes my day. So with that, I'll be back again with another amazing guest to share their journey, their story, and some advice for you very soon. But the last thing I'm going to ask is, Casey, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, motto, family verse, poem? Just words that really help you get through every day and stay inspired.
Yeah. Recently, I just came upon something. Let me see if I can remember it. All right. I do not hold others hostage for their love. And I'm just going to briefly describe what that means. Oftentimes, especially as women, and there's men out there too, of course, we feel self-conscious about how we look. Society has set up certain standards. We may even question our intelligence, but we can feel self-conscious. And I want others to make it okay to not be liked for something, that it's okay if someone doesn't like you because you have wrinkles or gray hair, or maybe you've said something that that doesn't agree with them, because you wouldn't cast a net over them and make them love you and stay with you. So that's why I say that I don't hold them hostage to try to get their acceptance. And by understanding that concept, for me, it's helped me just be really grounded and okay with who I am, that it's okay to have faults. It's okay to not feel good about myself, and that I don't have to do it for someone else's approval.
Amazing. Great words of wisdom to end our conversation on.
Thank you.
And thank you again, Casey Cohn.
Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbandamplified.com.